Hi, everyone. Dr. Victoria Skirbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. Today is the 13th? Today is the 13th of August. And today we have a first quarter square between Pluto and Mars. It is the first of three that we're having. And I think it's important because these first quarter squares are bound to create a lot of energy, a lot of crisis. And I'm hoping to impart some wisdom when it comes to the nature of these squares, where they come from, how we experience them, and perhaps what they're here to help us do. And this synodic cycle, the cycle between Pluto and Mars, happens every 2 years when Mars comes to the degree that Pluto is at. And depending on where Pluto is at, is where we are planting a seed to externally express or consciously express Mars, a unconscious desire, Pluto. And so there are ways to look at it. There are issues. Now, of course, with Pluto and Capricorn, the issue continues to be the issue of power, the issue of responsibility, the responsibility to those that you serve, or the irresponsibility to those you serve, your responsibility to yourself, your irresponsibility to yourself. All of these issues come up with Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn. And of course, Capricorn is the way things are structured. It's our governmental structures, it's large institutional structures, it's church structures, it's the structure of power, it's the hierarchy, right? One of the things that they would always say when you wanted to get something done, and say you were on one of the bottom rungs of the ladder, it would be like you have to go through the proper channels to get to the top. So there was all these sort of proper channels that were created for us to work within the hierarchical structure. But the hierarchical structure is it is changing and shifting, and it's becoming perhaps less hierarchical, if that's a word, and more collective in its, more humanitarian, more progressive in its nature. It is the nature of the energy as we evolve, right? We are evolving into what we have called the Aquarian age, which is an age of humanitarianism and an age of balance, and an age of a balance between the male and female. There's an androgyny to Aquarius. And so these are things that happen on all different levels. And what Pluto is in what sign it is at the moment, is really the world soul. It's our evolutionary edge. Ultimately, what Pluto does as it goes through a sign is it breaks down all the structures and exposes all the rot in whatever system, whatever archetype Pluto happens to be in. And so say when Pluto was in Libra, for example, it was mostly in the 70s, I think 71 to 83. That period of time, there was a transformation in the way that we relate to one another, a transformation in the law, right? Because it's Libra. So we go through these evolutionary changes and shifts. Now, eventually, Pluto is going to move out of Capricorn and move into Aquarius. And then we get to see the underside of Aquarius, because even though we're moving into the Aquarian age, there are things about Aquarius that are perhaps not in the light. And so what Pluto tries to do is it, on a certain level, tries to enlighten us to a situation. And Pluto is our feeling nature. Pluto is an emotional energy. And so we are not all that adept at working with and moving through our emotions. And we're not all that adept at understanding our emotions, because part of the function of our emotions and our feelings have been suppressed. And that suppression occurs um, uh, oftentimes through the energy of Saturn and Capricorn. And so as Pluto moves through Capricorn, all the oppressed and suppressed feelings come tumbling out. And so we're in a very sort of tumultuous time. And ultimately, the way Pluto evolves is through this polarity point. And the polarity point of Capricorn is Cancer. And so to a certain extent, we're here to feel our feelings. We have to feel our feelings. This is the direction of our evolution. So I want to talk a little bit about Pluto. And I created a slideshow for this, but it's very long. And I think what I'm going to do is we're only going to do part of it. We're going to get to these first quarter squares, okay? And maybe have a discussion about that. I'll see what kind of time frame I have, but I wanted to sort of put that out there up front as to what we're, just a little explanation about Pluto. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to talk about Pluto and okay, so hopefully you can see this, and we're going to view this as a slideshow. Okay, so now Mars and Pluto have a synodic cycle, and a synodic cycle is simply the cycle from the new phase, which is when the two planets are conjunct, to the next new phase when the two planets are conjunct. And when we're dealing with Mars, this generally is a 2-year period, during which time there is a retrograde period. So there's always going to be a part of the Mars-Pluto cycle where there's a lot of energy in sort of one phase of it. And in this case, in this synodic cycle that we're in, that particular sort of expanded phase, okay, because there are 8 phases that we talk about, and I'll show you a picture that you'll see what I mean by that. But this time between Pluto and Mars, the phase that gets expanded is actually the first quarter crescent phase to first quarter back to crescent, and then back to first quarter. So it's all around these first quarter squares of Pluto and Mars. So let's look. So I have here Mars and Pluto synodic cycle is the present world soul's unconscious desire, that's Pluto, becoming conscious through the initiatory energy of Mars, the planet of conscious desires. This is the cycle that brings the soul's unconscious desires into consciousness. And of course, the soul is the engine of our evolution. So this points to the direction of our evolution. Now let's look at the phases that I'm talking about. This is called here the lunation types and sectors, lunation cycle. And what the lunation cycle is it's the cycle between the sun and the moon, and the relationship of the sun and the moon at 8 different sort of junctures. And those junctures start with the conjunction, that's the new moon. And then in 45 degrees from the new moon, we have the semi-square. And then 45 degrees from the semi-square, we have the first quarter square, okay? And each one of these sectors has a specific energy. The new moon sector, from the conjunction to when the two planets, in this case Pluto and Mars, are 45 degrees away from each other. In that period of time, this is when we are initiating new things, going out, having new experience. The soul sends out Mars, and we interact with our environment. And Mars tends to be very inflammatory at times, right? And so it's like poking the bear. We're poking and poking and poking at this time. And then from 45 degrees to 90 degrees, all that experience from the new phase is kind of put into a context. We sort of tested the waters, and now we attempt to create a system within ourselves, because this is a yang phase and this is a yin phase. And so we go from this sort of outward pokey energy to taking it inwardly and seeing how that energy was responded to. How does it make us feel? Does it make us angry? Does it make us excited? You know, that kind of stuff. And we try to create a structure or a blueprint so that we can learn from these challenging experiences that we've had, in order to, in a way, sort of build a new foundation for a new way of reacting and responding. The crescent phase between 45 and 90 degrees is a time when we are trying to escape the ghosts of the past. So we're trying to do things in a different way. We're trying to figure out how can we move forward in a different way so that we don't find ourselves stuck in the same inertia that we were before, right? So this is an escaping of the past. And then when we get to that 90-degree square, this is when we have the crisis in action. And the crisis in action has the energy of Aries and Cancer. And Aries and Cancer are both signs about surviving and surviving. Really, they're survival signs. The Aries, you know, the new phase, which has the energy of Aries, is about survival of the individual. And when we get to Cancer, it's about survival of the family or the community or the pack, so to speak. So there's a real pack mentality when we get to that first quarter square. And we can see that being expressed in the outer world, and perhaps in our own world as well. And then when we get to that square, we move into another yang phase. So we have the initial yang, then we have the drawing in, the yin phase, then we have the next yang phase, and then when it gets to 135 degrees away from each other, that's called a sesquiquadrate. In this case, it's a waxing sesquiquadrate. Waxing, things are getting bigger and larger. And so, and continue to grow. We go into another period of time where we are going inside. And that gibbous phase has the energy of Virgo. And so we're trying to perfect, we're trying to change, we're trying to make adjustments in our desire nature, in the world's desire nature, this evolutionary process that we go through. And then we get to the opposition. And the opposition is where we have the awareness of something. Something is being born. What seed was planted at that initial conjunction? We don't really know, because as we work the energy on this part, the new crescent, first, and gibbous, it's actually very much an internal process. Everything is happening under sort of the covers, under to maybe to a certain extent conscious awareness. This is a much more unconscious place. It isn't until we get to that 180 degrees that we're actually conscious of something besides our own experience, in a way, okay? And so then for the next part of the cycle, this is a distribution of what is realized at that opposition. So where most of the energy is in this particular cycle, which began in March and goes until 2021. Most of the energy is happening right in this, actually in this phase here, but in these two phases. So we're moving, so this first quarter square we have today is here, and Mars is going to be moving forward, but then Mars is going to move backwards, and it's going to make a second square, only this time it's going back to the drawing board. And then it will turn around and it will go forward, and that's really when the action comes to really like make the change. So we'll have to look at when these particular squares are happening. We have the first, so today we have the first salvo of this. And so we have to watch and be aware of what's going on in the world. Okay, so let's go to the next. Okay, let's talk about the initial conjunction of these two planets. So the initial conjunction is when the planets unite in function and operate simultaneously within consciousness. Instinctual action and expression occur in order for discovery of the evolutionary intention relative to the planet that aspects Pluto, which in this case is Mars. Pure, unchecked expression without any egocentric awareness manifests. A brand new evolutionary a brand new evolutionary purpose or intent is initiated in this way. This I got from the book, The Evolutionary Astrology, Pluto and Your Karmic Mission by Deva A. Green, in case you're wondering where that came from. So we had the initial Mars-Pluto conjunction. It occurred in 2020, and it occurred on March 23rd. And this is the chart of that conjunction, and it is cast for Washington, D.C. So we're looking at this really from the perspective of the United States. Now, here we have Pluto and Mars in the house, the second house of money and resources, okay? Resources, resourcefulness. And you notice that we also have Pallas Athena here, we have Jupiter here, and we have Saturn over here that had just, right before this Mars-Pluto conjunction occurred, Saturn moved into Aquarius. So this gives us an idea, as Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, that this is sort of the initial sort of push that's going to bring us into a time when we're moving in a more Aquarian direction, Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn is also making a conjunction at the end of this year to Jupiter, right in that first degree of Aquarius. And that starts a 20-year cycle of Saturn and Jupiter having their conjunction. That's a whole nother story, but it is about a change in the way that we interact in society and expand and contract within society, Saturn and Jupiter. This Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that's occurring at the end of the year is in an air sign. For the last, I think it's 200 years or maybe 120 years, I'm not sure about that. It had been in earth signs. So this is sort of the first time that it's going into an air sign. And so that changes the energy of, so society, instead of it being an earthly expansion, it actually becomes a more mental expansion, right? And a more progressive expansion. Okay, so we have this Mars-Pluto conjunction in the second house of the United States at 25 degrees of Capricorn. Let's see what else is going on here. Just want to see if there's anything else I want to mention. Okay. So what is 25 degrees of Capricorn? Well, let's look at the Sabian symbol for 25 of Capricorn. It says a store filled with precious oriental rugs. The keynote is the use of cultural and artistic processes as a mean to enhance personal comfort and appreciation. This is from Dane Rudger's An Astrological Mandala. This is the book. But you can actually get this information from Mindfire online. I think it's either .com or .org, I'm not sure, but just put in Sabian symbols and you'll see Mindfire comes up, and this whole thing is listed, so you can use it as a reference. Because I don't think you can get this book. I think it's out of print, and if you find one, they're very expensive. It's a great book. It's definitely a book you want to have if you're going to be a serious student of astrology. But if you want to just sort of dabble and look and see, like, your sun is at what degree and what's the symbol for that, or my moon's at this degree, or my ascendant is at this degree, it tells you, it's another layer of understanding about yourself. You can use Mindfire. It's pretty simple. Okay, so coming after the preceding symbol, this one brings us back to the material yet aesthetic part of the benefits a society can bring its members. A rug always implied, to some extent, something on which a person stands or sits. It is the foundation for cultural understanding, and such can have a magical or sacred meaning, as in the case of prayer rugs, or like, what is that, the magic carpet, right? The magic carpet. The woman in a convent probably knows, now that's this symbol, a previous symbol, I believe, to that. The woman in the convent probably knows only the bare floor because her goal is one of transcendence, of surrendering comfort as well as cultural patterns. But to the social elite, or even the Oriental devotee praying to his God, society offers the relative comfort of a beautiful rug, so he may meet the universe, not merely in terms of the support the natural soil gives, but protected by and securely established in the mental, spiritual, as well as manual achievements of those who keep the cultural symbols alive. This is the last, let's see, it shows the beautiful products of dedicated and inspired group performance at the level of tradition. It emphasizes the value of reliance on tradition. Reliance on tradition. So if we look at the numerology of this conjunction, here in America, it was May 23rd, 2020, which is a 4 vibration. It vibrates to a 32.5. This is on the Tree of Life, the Sephiroth, Tiphareth, or Beauty. It is located in the heart chakra, and the card associated with this is the 6 of Wands, and the second decade of Leo, which is ruled by Jupiter. This vibration. We see this man on the horse. This is victory. He's got a wreath here, victory wreath here. He's wearing a wreath around his head, but he's sort of sitting back, probably pondering he's come back from war, pondering the victory and what the victory has cost him. This is a 5 vibration. The 5 is about freedom. This really talks about the cost of freedom, And what's interesting is that 32.5 is both the path of life of the United States, so the lesson that we're learning as a country, and it is also the shadow of the United States. And so this initial conjunction vibrating to the shadow of the United States is a process of exposing the shadow of the United States for healing. And last year, on his birthday, in 2019, Donald Trump went into a 32.5 year. And so his year was about the shadow of America. And he has successfully exposed and helped us see the shadow of America. That's what he's doing. And the shadow can only be the shadow until light is put on it. And as light is cast on the shadow disappears. So this is about uncovering something that's very, very deep in our consciousness. Now we have to remember that in 2021, 2022 and 2023, Pluto, the United States is having its Pluto return. The next cycle of Mars and Pluto is actually the initial conjunction of that synodic cycle that begins in 2021 or 2022, is actually right on the United States Pluto. So this is this is the beginning of the change. This is really quite huge, and that's why I'm spending time trying to sort of share what my understanding of this. And I just need to check my time, because I do have a reading coming up, and I don't want to. Okay. Okay, I do have a little time. All right, so let me continue. So these were the headlines for this day, the 23rd of March. Global COVID-19 death toll passes 15,000 as Italy drafts military to enforce the lockdown. So that was global COVID. Angela Merkel to self-quarantine after her doctor tests positive for COVID-19. The first COVID-19 cases reported in occupied Gaza, war-stricken Syria, and Afghanistan. Coronavirus cases mount across Africa. Coronavirus leads to lockdowns, travel bans in Latin America, and a Colombian prison riot turns deadly. India locks down major cities in an effort to contain the coronavirus spread. 1 in 13 people in the US are under lockdown as cases soar and critical supplies dwindle. Mike Pompeo in Afghanistan in an attempt to revive faltering US Taliban deals. So these are some of the headlines of the day that Pluto and Saturn made their, Pluto and Mars made their conjunction. Now, the next aspect that we have is the semi-square. That's the 45-degree angle I talked about. It says a transitional aspect leading into the crescent phase. The conflict or stress in the aspect is the competing desires to generate even more and new experiences, the new phase, and the need to consolidate, internalize, and establish a personal meaning within the evolutionary intention of Pluto, the Pluto aspect. So new discoveries can be integrated, crescent phase. Again, this is from David Green's book, and I have an itch, I have to itch. So the waxing or growing semi-square, the next phase that brings us into the crescent phase, occurred on May 27th. So that initial phase, the new phase, went from March 23rd to May 27th. So we can look at that period of time as being the time of, as I described it, poking the bear. And we can see here that we have, this again is the United States. We have Pluto here at 25 degrees of Capricorn. And we have Mars at 10 degrees of Pisces. Now we have to remember that this interaction has to do with consolidating and learning from, okay, and integrating. This is an integrative period. And these are the symbols associated with that. Again, we're at 25 degrees of Capricorn. So the whole Oriental rug experience and symbol is it's the same symbol, right? But what's different is Mars, right? Now Mars is at 10 degrees of Pisces, and it says an aviator pursues his journey flying through ground obscuring clouds. Man's ability to develop powers and skills which are transcending natural limitations, by transcending natural limitations, allows him to operate in mental, spiritual realms. And so this is about integrating, but integrating with a higher sort of connection, a higher spiritual or higher energetic connection to things, so that what's getting integrated is not just the physical sequelae of that initial conjunction, but the spiritual and energetic and sort of higher vibrational energies that come to bear for us to understand and move forward. And this is the symbol for that particular date when we had that waxing semi-square, the 27th. It's a 36-9 vibration. It's in the Sephiroth of Malkuth, which is kingdom. It is the root chakra. So we're talking about survival, and it's the 10 of Wands, which is the third decan of, it's actually the third decan of Sagittarius. It's not Virgo, it's Sagittarius. And the third decan of Sagittarius, I believe, is ruled by Jupiter. So we have another Jupiter-ruled decan here. This is about great burdens. This is about figuring out how we're going to organize and move forward. All these things coming at us at once. All the things, and this period of time, it was a period of time when there was all the ways that we would normally interact or normally deal with issues. There was a lot of constraint because of Corona. Most of us were in lockdown at this time. And so trying to figure things out while you don't have the accessibility of what you've had in the past, sort of, this is, you know, crisis is the mother of invention here. Crisis and constraint is the mother of invention. Okay, so these are the headlines for this day. 4 Minneapolis cops fired after shocking video shows the killing of George Floyd. Federal food programs fails to reach millions even as children hunger surges in the US. So we're seeing all the problems now. How are we going to change things? How are we going to reform things? How are we going to fix these issues and problems? New York Governor Cuomo shielded nursing homes from liability after big campaign donation. GOP governors vie for a Republican National Convention as North Carolina won't commit to packed arenas. Yemen's health system has collapsed amid an explosion of coronavirus cases. Trump threatens to close down social media site as Twitter tags his tweets as misleading. So we can feel there's a sense of constraint. There's a sense of not just constraint, but people being held accountable here. People being held accountable. And then we have the crisis in action square. And this is where we're at right now. And we're going to have 4 of them. And I think what I'm going to do is, hold on one second, I'm just going to check. Just going to check the time. Okay, I got to get moving. All right. Okay, so the first quarter square is a crisis in action. The individual meaning of the evolutionary intention of the Pluto aspect must now be given a new form to operate through. The new form must manifest in order for the evolutionary intention to be fully integrated and established. The specific form that needs to be established is relative to the planet that aspects Pluto, Mars. So what actions do we need to take? Creative tension manifests because there is commonly a compulsive temptation to slide back into old patterns of behavior versus allowing the new patterns to be integrated. And so this is why people are, you know, they're either responding by going forward or they're trying to hold things back. So this is the natural process at this time. And here we have today's first quarter square. It's the 13th of August. And it actually occurs at 3:14 a.m. in the morning. So it's already happened. And here we have Pluto here in the 7th house of partnerships and open enemies. And we have Mars in the 10th house here, which is the house of the president. This is what I think it is this is Biden what are you calling Kamala Harris as his running mate. And of course, the president, the 10th house, is feeling the pressure of that and the attack of that. So that's interesting. Pluto is at 24 degrees of Capricorn, and the symbol is a woman entering a convent. The keynote is total commitment to a transcendent goal. Total commitment to a transcendent goal. And then we have Mars at 24 degrees of Aries, right? Yeah, 24 degrees. It says, blown inward by the wind, the curtains of an open window take shape of a cornucopia. The keynote here is openness to the influx of spiritual energies. So, as we face the challenges of this first quarter square, it is important for us to understand that spirit is with us. And if we need help, we just merely have to ask. And this is the numerology for this day, today, when we have this first quarter square. And it is a 25/7 vibration, which is located in the Sephiroth of Tiphareth, or beauty. It's located in the heart chakra. It is the Knight of Wands, and it's symbolic of the season of spring. And the Knight of Wands is somebody who goes on a quest. And that quest is informed by a connection to spirit and an understanding of spirit. But it is a quest, and it is the start of a journey. And so we don't know what that journey is going to bring for us. We don't know. There's an expectancy, but we're not really sure. And so there is this energy, as it being fire, is to experience what needs to be experienced at this time, and then be able to take that experience forward. And then what's going to happen when Mars stations retrograde, Mars is going to start backing up. And that's a process of reorientation and reevaluation. And perhaps some of the things that we've done in this first sort of wave of the first quarter square, we get to think about how and what happened. And then when we get to that third square, that's when things really start to move. And I'm not going to go deeply into that. We're going to talk about that in the future. But the second square, when Mars is retrograde, now Mars goes retrograde at the beginning of September, and this second first quarter square that we're talking about happens in October. So from September to beginning of September to October, while Mars is moving retrograde, we get to reevaluate this sort of first wave of trying to create foundations for a new way of being, a new soul expression. Okay, and then we will go over this at the time. And then the last one occurs on December 23rd. And that's when things really that's when we really start to move forward into this new realization, so it's almost like giving 3 really hard pushes to bring the soul's crisis in action, what actions to take. So we'll talk about this as it happens. We'll come back to this, and we'll talk about in another video. I'm going to talk about the next 2 squares. We'll talk about the sesquiquadrate that are happening, the opposition, the last quarter square, and the next time these 2 planets, Mars and Pluto, come together, and when that happens. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe, and I will be back with another sort of version of this. Take care.